The hidden pain of a child who grew up lonely. You don't always remember it as loneliness. Sometimes it didn't look like crying in a dark room. Sometimes it looked like being fine, being easy, being the kid who didn't cause problems, the kid who could entertain themselves, the kid who didn't ask for much. But the body remembers what the mind learned to downplay. It remembers the sound of a house that never truly felt like it was waiting for you. It remembers the way you'd come home and instinctively scan the air, like a weather report, trying to predict whether your presence would be welcomed, ignored, or punished. It remembers how you learned to be small without being told. And maybe the strangest part is this. You didn't just grow up lonely. You grew up trained to be lonely, because at some point your nervous system made a bargain, a sacred, silent bargain that many people will never understand. That's the paradox. The thing that saved you became the thing that sabotages you. Your independence became a fortress. Your calm became camouflage. Your quiet became a language. I don't need anything. And deep down, you started to mistake that for strength. But loneliness doesn't just hurt. It shapes. It shapes what you expect from people. It shapes what you feel allowed to ask for. It shapes the ceiling of your intimacy. How close you can let someone get before your system starts screaming danger. And that's the hidden pain. Not that you were alone, but that you learned to live as if connection was optional, when, biologically, it's not. So, if you're listening to this and you're thinking, I've always felt different, I've always felt separate, I've always felt like I'm watching life through glass, I want you to hear this clearly. You are not broken, you are adapted. And today we're going to name the adaptation, so you can finally stop living inside it. Let's define the archetype we're talking about. This is the child who grew up with social starvation. Not always a lack of people, but a lack of attunement. A lack of the experience of being emotionally met, seen, reflected, wanted. Sometimes it's an only child. Sometimes it's the kid in a big family who still felt invisible. Sometimes it's the mature kid surrounded by chaos. Sometimes it's the kid who moved a lot, changed schools, lived in emotional exile. Sometimes it's emotional neglect, food on the table, clothes on your back, but no one touched the inside of your world. Psychologically, this often creates a few key patterns. Emotional neglect. Emotional neglect isn't what happened to you. It's what didn't happen. No one taught you that your feelings were welcome. No one stayed long enough in your sadness to show you it was survivable. No one mirrored you with that simple human message. I'm here. You make sense. And without that mirroring, you don't learn emotional continuity, the feeling that you remain lovable even when you're messy, needy, afraid, or inconvenient. You learn a different lesson, avoidant attachment and the deactivating strategy. Attachment theory, John Bowlby, Mary Ainsworth, teaches that children don't just seek love, they seek reliability. And when love is inconsistent, unavailable, or emotionally unsafe, many children develop an avoidant style. Not because they don't want closeness, but because closeness has become unpredictable. Avoidant attachment often comes with what psychologists call deactivating strategies. You downplay needs. You intellectualize emotion. You detach before you're detached from. You tell yourself you're better off alone. This isn't coldness, it's self-protection. A child can't afford to believe, my caregivers don't have space for me. That would mean I am not safe. So instead, the child believes, I don't need anyone. That belief feels empowering until it becomes a cage. Hypervigilance. Lonely children often become hypervigilant, even in quiet homes. Hypervigilance isn't only scanning for physical danger, it's scanning for emotional danger. Is this person annoyed? Did I say too much? Am I being judged? Is affection about to disappear? It's like living with an internal security camera that never turns off. Neurologically, this can keep the nervous system biased toward threat detection. The amygdala becomes quick to fire. The body starts living slightly up, a little tense, a little braced, a little prepared to be disappointed. And there's another layer here that people rarely talk about. Loneliness can train the brain's default mode network, DMN, the system associated with self-referential thinking, to become a closed loop. The mind becomes the only companion, so it talks to itself more, and eventually it starts to trap itself. Overthinking becomes a substitute for co-regulation. Rumination becomes a substitute for being held. So the child becomes a planet with its own atmosphere, self-contained, functional, distant. And from the outside, people call it maturity. But inside, it's survival architecture. The emotional cost and philosophical weight, the core of the pain. The cost of childhood loneliness is not just sadness, it's invisible grief. Grief for the conversations you never had. Grief for the comfort you never expected. Grief for the version of you that could have been louder, softer, messier, more alive. And here's the part that hits the deepest. When you grow up lonely, you don't just miss people, you miss yourself. Because you learn to edit your personality for the environment. You learn to become digestible, low maintenance, predictable. You sacrifice authenticity for belonging. And then you don't even get belonging. So you end up with the worst trade deal imaginable. You give up your needs, you give up your voice, you give up your complexity, and you still feel alone. That's why the pain is so confusing as an adult. Because sometimes you're not alone. You have friends, co-workers, a partner, a family of your own, and still you feel like you're living behind a sheet of glass. That's not you being dramatic. That's a developmental wound. The psychoanalyst D.W. Winnicott talked about the false self, a version of the self built to survive environments where the true self isn't welcomed. Lonely children often become experts at false self-functioning. They become good, they become helpful, they become fine, and they lose touch with the raw, unedited self that says, I miss you, I'm scared, hold me, choose me, stay. Carl Jung famously said, loneliness does not come from having no people about you, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to you. That's the core. Loneliness isn't the absence of bodies, it's the absence of witnessing. And once you've lived without witnessing long enough, you start to fear vulnerability. Not because you don't want love, but because vulnerability feels like standing in a doorway you once knocked on, and no one answered. So you stop knocking. The core fear becomes simple but absolute. If I let myself need, I will be disappointed. And then even simple life moments become complex. A compliment makes you suspicious. A kind gesture makes you wonder what it costs. Someone getting close makes you brace for the moment they see the real you and leave. Your nervous system confuses intimacy with risk, and that confusion becomes your personality, until you realize it was never a personality. It was a pattern. When childhood loneliness grows up, it doesn't always look like obvious sadness. It often looks like competence. It looks like emotional control. It looks like independence. It looks like I'm just private. But underneath, the coping strategies keep running, quietly, automatically. Here are some of the most common adult manifestations. See if you recognize yourself. You overfunction in relationships. You might be the one who checks in first, listens more than you speak, anticipates needs, becomes useful to stay close. But usefulness is not intimacy. Usefulness is a strategy the lonely child uses to earn a place. You struggle to receive, love, help, care. When someone offers support, your body doesn't relax. It tightens. Because receiving feels like debt, like obligation, like danger, like I'll owe you. So you say, I'm good, even when you're not. You emotionally self-isolate when stressed. When life gets hard, you don't reach out. You disappear. Not because you don't want connection, but because your system learned that stress is something you handle alone, quietly, without burdening anyone. You might even feel irritated when people ask what's wrong, because part of you thinks, that's the lonely child guarding the wound. You choose emotionally unavailable people, or become unavailable yourself. This one is brutal. You may find yourself drawn to partners or friends who feel familiar, distant, inconsistent, hard to reach. Because chasing love recreates childhood, and the nervous system often prefers familiar pain over unfamiliar safety. Or you become the unavailable one. Slow to commit, hard to read, always fine, allergic to emotional dependency. You have weak boundaries, or walls instead of boundaries. Loneliness can create two extremes. You either have porous boundaries because you're afraid to lose people, or build walls so high no one can truly enter. Boundaries say, this is where I end and you begin. Walls say, no one gets in. Walls feel safe, but they also keep out what you need most. Your inner world is loud, but your outer world stays quiet. You might be deeply self-aware, introspective, philosophical. But when it comes time to speak, ask, confess, request, initiate, something shuts down. Because your nervous system still believes, so you become fluent in insight, but stuck in expression. You minimize your pain and gaslight yourself. This is one of the most tragic symptoms. You tell yourself, it wasn't that bad. Other people had it worse. I'm being sensitive. I should be over it. But the body doesn't heal through minimization. The body heals through witnessing. And this is the turning point, realizing these are not fixed traits. They are coping strategies. You are not just independent. You are not just private. You are not just low maintenance. You learned to be that way so you could survive emotional absence. So the unlearning begins with one radical practice. Stop abandoning yourself in the same way you were abandoned. Stop explaining away what hurt you. Stop calling your needs too much. Stop treating longing like a character flaw. The goal is not to blame the past. The goal is to see the pattern clearly, without flinching. Because you can't break what you refuse to name. The healing, conclusion, and affirmation, the path to wholeness. Healing childhood loneliness is not about becoming extroverted. It's not about forcing yourself into more social situations. It's not about performing confidence. It's about restoring a broken internal contract. A new contract that says, here are a few practical pathways that actually work, because they don't rely on motivation alone. They rely on rewiring. Inner child reparenting. Become the person you were waiting for. This isn't cheesy, it's neurological. The lonely child inside you is still scanning for the moment someone notices. So healing begins when you notice. Ask yourself regularly, what did I need then that I didn't get? What am I feeling right now that I'm trying not to feel? If my loneliness had a voice, what would it ask for? Then answer with action. Rest without earning it, comfort without justification, reassurance without performance. Somatic safety. Teach the nervous system that closeness won't kill you. If your nervous system learned intimacy equals threat, you don't think your way out. You practice your way out. Small acts of co-regulation. Making eye contact a second longer. Saying one honest sentence instead of 10 polite ones. Asking for a small favour and letting someone give. Letting a compliment land without deflecting. You're not chasing dramatic transformation. You're building tolerance for being held. Shadow work. Reclaim the unwanted parts you buried to be accepted. Jung's shadow isn't evil. It's everything you were forced to exile. For the lonely child, the shadow often contains neediness, anger, grief, desire, the wish to be chosen without proving worth. Shadow work asks, what did I label unacceptable in myself because it didn't get love? And then, gently, bring it back. Not to act it out destructively, but to stop living split in half. Choose relationships that can hold reality, not performance. One of the hardest truths is this. You can't heal loneliness around people who benefit from you staying low need. If someone only likes you when you're useful, agreeable, quiet, or emotionally convenient, your nervous system will keep reliving the past. Healing requires at least one relationship, friend, partner, therapist, community, where you can say, I'm not okay. I need reassurance. I'm scared, and not be punished for it. Replace the old pride with a new dignity. Lonely children often develop a pride that says, but there's a deeper dignity available. Receiving is not weakness. Receiving is repair. The human nervous system is not designed to heal in isolation. And one of the most important quotes in psychology comes from Carl Rogers. What is most personal is most universal. Your loneliness feels uniquely yours, like a private language. But it's not proof you're defective. It's proof you adapted. So, here's the ending I want to leave you with. You were not meant to be a self-contained planet. You were meant to be a person, messy, needing, real, who gets to belong without shrinking. Breaking the pattern doesn't mean you become someone else. It means you stop confusing your survival strategy for your identity. You are not here to be fixed. You are here to become whole. If this script put words to something you've carried silently, share it with someone who lives behind glass too. And if you want more deep dives into childhood trauma patterns, attachment wounds, and the hidden social dynamics that shape your life, subscribe. Because the moment you can name the wound is the moment you stop obeying it.